Hello, the Master here. Today we are going to see all of the unused content for Baldi's Basics. This includes Classic Remastered, Plus and the demos. We are going in order, so let's start right off with Baldi's Basics Classic. So in Baldi's Basics Classic, there's a voice line of Baldi that was left unused, which was the scrapped spelling subject. Baldi's Basics used to have more subject instead of just math, but Miss Man decided to scrap that idea and just make one subject. Now here's the audio if you want to hear it.
I hope you like bees, because it's time for spelling. Answer the 3 questions correctly, and you might get something special.
Now let's take a look at You Can ThinkPad, as there exists a scrapped voice line for Baldi that says divided by, so division problems were supposed to be a thing. This most likely was scrapped to being a little bit hard, but never got an exact confirmation on why it got scrapped.
Divided by...
We've talked about Baldi a lot, so let's talk about principle of the thing, as there are a lot of scrapped voice lines. The first one is no stepping people in the halls. That was scrapped because of the character Pencil Boy that had that function to step people with pencils. But this was scrapped, so therefore the voice line was too.
No stabbing people with pencils in the halls.
Okay, the next one wasn't really scrapped, but cut from the game in Classic version 1.2.2, which was no eating food in the halls. Here's the audio.
No eating food in the halls.
Okay, now let's talk about playtime, as there are a voice line that got removed after Classic 1.0 and never got added back. The voice line consists of playtime teaching the player on how to jump rope, but was scrapped because playtime just talks a lot in this voice line, so it could take a lot of time to do the jump rope minigame because of that. Also in the audio, playtime says to jump rope 10 times, so the minigame would be a lot larger.
Jump rope 10 times in a row. Once you do, I'll let you go.
Alright, this sums up all of the unused audio for Baldi's Basics Classic. Now let's take a look at scrapped characters that were going to be added in Classic. The first one is Pencil Boy, which I've already mentioned here. Pencil Boy would stab the player with pencils, but was scrapped because it could be very annoying to the players. And I do agree a lot with this. Now let's talk about the other one, which is the tutorial tape recorder. This was actually in the game at some point, but it was removed in 1.1. This isn't actually an NPC, but it was a character that talked in the tape recorder when you played it in the detention room. The tape gave you advice on how to play the game, but this was removed because no one really paid attention to them. The tapes were really long to put here, and there's 5 different audios, so I just won't put here. But if you want to see it, go to the Baldi's Basics wiki. This wiki has been really helpful for most of the info in here, so there's all 5 audios in there. Now to the final unused thing in Baldi's Basics Classic, which is the subjects, that I've already mentioned here before. There was more subjects instead of just math. The subjects that were going to be included was science, spelling, geology, English, history and geography. Those were scrapped to the people outside of USA would not understand some of those subjects like history and spelling. This is because the people would just not be familiar with American history nor English, so math was the only one that got added. Okay, Birthday Bash will be really quick, because there's only one unused audio for it. This audio was used for testing, thus it was never supposed to be in the game.
Can the parrot sound like me?
Alright, that does for Baldi's Basics Classic and Birthday Bash, so let's talk about the demos. Well, in Baldi's Basics full game public demo, there's some weird images that were actually from a CRT filter for Unity that Miss Man used, but it never got actually added to the final release. That's really about it for the demo, sadly. So let's go to the one that has the most unused content, which is Baldi's Basics Plus. There's a lot of scrapped voice lines for Plus. The first one I'm going to show off in here is some of Miss Pump scrapped voice lines. Miss Pump was going to have voice lines counting down way more numbers than Miss Pump does in the original game. Miss Pump would count down 9 to 0, so the player would have a lot of time to go to her class. This most likely was scrapped because it was really long and would be really easy to avoid Miss Pump getting angry. Here's all the voice lines.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Now let's talk about Johnny. There's a lot of voice lines that wasn't used. 4 voice lines to be exact. Those were scrapped because of the expelling hammer, which was a hammer that appeared before Johnny's door redesign. Now take a listen at the voice lines.
You can expel someone for the rest of your game. Alright, I'll take care of it. Okay, I'll let them know. You are a jerk!
Okay, now let's go to the scrapped textures. I don't know why, but for some reason there was a 0 power tubes texture. I guess you can see why was this scrapped, because it just doesn't make sense to have 0 lives. With 0 lives you just die and I have to try it again. And you will basically restart all of your progress. So yeah, I think it's obvious why was this scrapped from the game and never appeared. Weirdly enough, this actually got a version after 0.2, even though it was never used. Okay, now let's talk about the scrapped poster that was just used for placeholder. It's just one of Miss Van profile pictures but tethered. This was in the game for a really long time. On 0.3.5, this was used as a placeholder for the broken window texture. But sadly this poster was removed from the game files on 0.4. This was mostly it for the textures. Now let's talk about scrapped characters for Plus. There's really not much to talk since there's only 2. Okay, the first one was Test NPC. The name is self-explanatory. It was an NPC that was used for testing the NPC state machine on 0.4. Now moving on to the next character. This character is more interesting because this is not the NPCs just for testing, but the character that was actually going to be added for the main game. The name of the character is Tim Tom. Tim Tom is really not a new character made for Plus, but was rather made for the Baldi Model comic series. He was supposed to appear in Plus, but Miss Man confirmed that he never actually planned on adding him. There's a lot of them actually, but most of them are just for testing. Let's go to the first one, which is Farm Field Trip Collision Map. This map was used for testing the collisions between animals, walls, and a barn in the background. This was a testing for the old Farm Field Trip, which is not available in the current version. Okay, the next one is the Light Test Room, that was added in 0.3.8, but got changed in 0.6. As you can see, the first version of the map had a bunch of chalkboards and a bunch of other random stuff. But in 0.6, this got changed to be just a normal test room with Baldi and playtime. Alright, the next one is the NPC State Machine test map that was added in 0.5. As you can see from the map, this map was used to test the NPC State Machine system that was added in 0.4. But if you load this map in the game, it would get an error. Sadly, in 0.7, this map was removed. This map was actually shown in one of the Kickstarter updates. It is just a school filled with a bunch of objects, most likely to test the optimization. There was actually another collision calling test map in 0.4, which contains a bunch of empty rooms and hallways. Okay, to the final test map is the title screen light map preview. Yeah, this is a really long name. This is just a map with a quad mesh with a light map texture. This is inside of the main menu, and there's nothing more besides that. Now finally, to the final scrapped location, which is the Wild West field trip. Yep, there is another field trip besides the farm and camping. This is really unfinished, because most of the textures in it is placeholders. But there's actually a new item in here, which is the plungers. In the minigame, there were multiple rooms that the player could hide from Baldi or shoot plungers to them. Phew! That was all of them. Now let's go to the final game in the list, which is Baldi's Basics Classic Remastered. There's only one unused thing for Classic Remastered, which is the number sprites. They're supposed to be on an indicator that how many bonus questions were solved, but they instead just got used for Baldi's math machine when you try to beat hard mode. But the only ones that got reused was the 1, 2 and 3 number sprites, because the rest were scrapped. Alright, everything is done. I know that there are a lot of things that also got scrapped in a way that I didn't say in this video, such as the old field trips, because I don't think it was necessary to put them here, as they have been in the game for a long time before its removal. Almost forgot to say this, but the Baldi's Basics wiki has been really helpful throughout this video, so I just have to thank them. And with that out of the way, I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and goodbye.